You need clean air and water and soil. I don't care where you live. And you have a right to it.
How sure are you that that depot caused problems and is still causing problems?
I am 100% certain.
I got the interstitial lung disease. I got asthma. My mama and my grandmother had asthma. It's the air pollution. I most definitely believe that.
They would say that you would get diagnosed on Sunday of 1 week and you'd be dead by the next week. That's what the depot cancer is.
In your opinion, do you think a more complete study needs to be done in this neighborhood?
Yes, absolutely, no question. The truth has to be repeated over and over again, and you get the truth from the folks who are suffering.
Just want to be clear, you're not just saying the depot made my family sick, you're saying the depot killed my family.
Yeah, they killed them. They have taken the life of my sister, my auntie, my mom. You damn near killed me. It was that depot. It was that depot.
Every community deserves clean air, soil, and water. It's why Fox 13 has continued to investigate our contaminated communities, showing you how pollution impacts our neighbors. Tonight, a special report on the old defense depot here in South Memphis. The EPA declared the U.S. Army Distribution Center a Superfund site in 1992, adding it to the list of the most toxic sites in the country. The Army housed and dumped everything from toxic solvents to chemical weapons here. There is no question the site was contaminated during its operation. The government has spent millions of dollars cleaning up the depot property, and though it closed nearly 30 years ago, some people who live nearby say the depot's dirty past is still causing their health problems today, and they say they want answers.
This has been going on ever since the 1940s.
When the Memphis Defense Depot closed in 1997, it left behind a lot of contamination that polluted the ground and water.
It was that depot. It was that depot.
And people who lived near the depot when and after it was in operation from the 40s until it closed say those chemicals have led to widespread sickness and death in countless families. Just want to be clear, you're not just saying the depot made my family sick, you're saying the depot killed my family.
Yeah, they killed them. They killed them. And they do not want to take any responsibility for that.
Frank Johnson grew up in this house steps away from the depot on Compton Avenue in the 90s. He says after his mother was diagnosed with brain cancer in 1998, he started hearing horror stories of other people in the neighborhood getting sick.
Then I went to Miss Porter's house. Mr. Porter said, well, yeah, my wife had brain cancer. And I was like, well, when did she have brain cancer? He was like, 98.
That's the same time your mother had brain cancer in 98.
Yeah. And then I went down the street to Miss Sue. Sue said she had cancer 3 times.
Johnson's mother died the next year. A decade and a half later, his sister and aunt would be diagnosed with the same form of brain cancer. Both eventually died. So there was a name for the cancer in the neighborhood, the depot cancer.
Yes. Yes.
And everybody knew about this.
Yeah. Yes.
Johnson never developed cancer, but 2 years ago, he says he had a stroke that almost killed him. Johnson is still working to regain full movement. He says the depot has robbed him of a normal life free from sickness and disease.
Because they have taken the life of my sister, my auntie, my mom. You damn near killed me.
And Johnson is sounding the alarm for people who are new to the neighborhood.
They are absolutely in danger.
And have no idea.
They have no idea.
That fear has lingered for decades. Fox 13 has covered neighbors' concerns for more than 30 years.
Stop the depot and dumps on me!
The EPA declared the Defense Depot a Superfund site in 1992, one of the most contaminated and toxic places in the country.
They have found over 180 chemicals
at the depot. When you bury as many people as we have in our community, we know that something is wrong.
Environmental activist Doris DeBerry Bradshaw led the way for decades.
What we would like to see the government come and stand up to its responsibility, take care of the people that are sick, make them comfortable.
Bradshaw went head to head with government agencies that she says didn't do enough to clean up the mess they had made.
Until the government cleans up the source, we are still going to have this problem for years to come.
Her daughter, Marquita Bradshaw, continues that activism for the people of Alcee Ball.
Because the chemicals there were not just everyday household chemicals that you may use, but they were made to be used in warfare to kill people and plants very effectively.
She says the depot contamination made her great-grandmother sick like many others.
She had what most people call the depot cancer, where it comes up, you're diagnosed, and then it grows so fast that people die very quickly.
Many women living in the area have reported reproductive problems.
It's affecting how long they live and also affecting how they reproduce. Many of my friends had miscarriages before they had a live birth, or even had their whole uterus removed before they even completed their families, or not having issues with fibroids and uterine issues where they couldn't reproduce.
And Bradshaw, like Johnson, says the danger is still not over.
How certain are you? How sure are you that that depot caused problems and is still causing problems?
I am 100% certain that those chemicals that were made to kill people and plants is still affecting people today and still impacting our groundwater because they're still monitoring it.
So you'd like to see reparations?
Absolutely.
Bradshaw says the government should pay families for their suffering and the loss of family members. But so far, none of the families who say they were adversely impacted by the depot have seen a single penny. The Memphis Defense Depot started in the early 1940s during World War II. The depot provided supplies to soldiers around the world and thousands of jobs in our community. There were a few homes nearby when construction began on mostly vacant land northwest of the Memphis airport. But in the decades that followed, neighborhoods surrounded the property: Castalia Heights, Hamilton, Elliston Heights, Prospect Park, Alcee Ball. Over the years, the depot housed an untold variety of chemicals, including the solvent TCE, the pesticide dieldrin, chromium, benzene, and arsenic. Some of those are now banned. There are two main contaminated sites, Dunn Field to the north. Records indicate this is where most of the toxic materials were dumped, including the chemical weapon mustard gas. But the rest of this 600-acre site, most of it anyway, included warehouses, many still standing. After the depot was declared an EPA Superfund site in 1992, extensive work was done to remove contaminated earth, extract dangerous chemical vapors from the soil. The land was eventually declared safe for use by the EPA, and the old Army site now houses many private businesses. For decades, workers have monitored groundwater for contamination using a series of small wells dug around the property and in the neighborhood nearby. And that testing continues even today. Connecting what happened in the past to what neighbors are experiencing now is complicated. There are many contributing factors for cancer and other serious illnesses, including overall lifestyle, genetics, environmental exposure. The concerns of neighbors in South Memphis have been studied before, and FOX13 investigative reporter Kayla Solomon shows us what those studies reveal.
FOX13 found at least 3 different studies completed on different aspects of the Defense Depot over the last 3 decades, 1 federal, 1 local, and 1 state.
Dump the depot!
In the 90s, neighbors pushed the EPA and other agencies to find out what was making them sick. The first study was completed in 2000, 8 years after the site was added to the Superfund list. In that study, scientists never went door to door or interviewed neighbors about their health problems. Instead, they relied on data from the Tennessee Cancer Registry. They picked the years 1990 to 1996 because researchers believed those years had the most accurate available cancer data. Only new cancer cases for people living in the neighborhood during that time were considered, a total of 665 of them from the census tracts surrounding the depot. Scientists compared those cases to the cancer rate in the rest of the state and determined, quote, overall cancer incidence occurred near or below expected rates in the 6 census tracts surrounding the Memphis Depot area during the period 1990 to 1996. The study notes its own limitations, notably that cancer takes years to manifest and people moved into and out of the neighborhood. The next study was done in 2022 and 2023. Local organization Protect Our Aquifer conducted its own tests on the tap water and the soil in the neighborhoods closest to the depot, listening to years of concerns from neighbors.
We knew that it was close to a well field, and so whenever the 5-year review for the Superfund site came up in 2022, that was when we really started to do a deep dive and really try to understand what's happened at that site, what the current status is, and where we want to see the cleanup go from there.
We did the soil samples and it showed that there were high levels of arsenic. So when I say high, it was above the residential soil screening levels. But that's typical of what you see in West Tennessee. They weren't like super high to where you'd be like, where's this coming from? But what we saw in the water was lead. And with that lead is because it's not necessarily in the groundwater. It's because of the infrastructure, the pipes in people's homes, or whether there's lead service lines or whatever.
The next cancer study in this area was completed in December 2024 by the Tennessee Department of Health. Again, it used data from the Tennessee Cancer Registry, not from speaking with neighbors. The study period was 2010 to 2019 and only focused on 2 types of cancer, brain cancer and female reproductive cancer. It says in conclusion, the findings did not provide evidence of higher occurrences of cancers of interest near the site, but it also acknowledges that community concerns are often complex and long-term. FOX13 reached out to the EPA regarding the cleanup and monitoring of the Defense Depot site. In a statement, the EPA says in part, past cleanup actions at DDMT have included extensive soil excavation, soil vapor extraction, groundwater bioremediation, and air sparging. These efforts have removed thousands of pounds of contaminants from soil and groundwater, addressing the most significant sources of contamination. It also says there is no exposure risk for residents or people who worked under current conditions. The EPA says investigations were done in 2023 and 2024 for potential toxic vapors leaking into homes on certain streets, but the compounds were, quote, well below EPA screening levels and posed no risk to residents. In South Memphis, Kayla Solomon, FOX13 investigates.
The Defense Depot was open from 1942 until 1997. The federal government study of cancer rates examined 6 of those 55 years, 1990 to 1996. Frank Johnson's mother was diagnosed in 1998. She was never counted. The state study on cancer rates looked at 2010 to 2019. Johnson's sister and aunt were diagnosed in 2014. But they didn't live in the family home at the time of their diagnoses, so they were never counted either. In fact, the state study completed last year found the home where Frank Johnson lives to be a cold spot for brain cancer, reporting fewer than expected cases. That's 3 brain cancer cases the government never counted. And there are countless other uncounted cases, illnesses right here in South Memphis. And that's why neighbors are still calling for a complete investigation. And now there's an expert scientist supporting that call.
they would say that you would get diagnosed on Sunday of 1 week and you'd be dead by the next week. That's what the depot cancer is.
Concerns about cancer and other illnesses plaguing parts of South Memphis. Fox 13's Contaminated community investigation showed you neighbors' fears and what the government has done to address those fears. As we have shown you, there are limitations in the studies that have been done so far. Fox 13 health reporter Mandy Rock digs a little deeper, asking if it's time for another look at what's happened near the old Defense Depot.
I got the interstitial lung disease. I got asthma, but when I was growing up, it was diagnosed as bronchitis. About 20 years ago, I got diagnosed with leukemia. Just a small trace in my blood, though.
In the weeks since her uncle died from leukemia, Debbie Bolden has been struggling to catch her breath, both physically and emotionally.
Really, it comes on like with stress. Like with the passing of my uncle. My boy's been raspy like this. He died, since he's been in the hospital.
She and her uncle lived in the same South Memphis neighborhood her entire life, just blocks from the old Memphis Defense Depot. Every house and street corner tells a story from her past.
My great-great-grandparents bought this house in 1959. This is the first house on the street.
It's also a place where nearly every family has a story like hers.
My mama had asthma also, and my grandmother had asthma. It's the air pollution. I most definitely believe that.
2 official cancer cluster studies looked at rates of certain cancers in the area. One in 2000 conducted by the CDC's Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, and another in 2024, conducted by the Tennessee Department of Health. Both found no statistically significant increase during the years studied, but those reports only considered cancer, not other health problems. And they only counted cases that fell inside specific time frames if people were still living in those same homes. That means stories like those in Debbie's family, her case of leukemia, and her uncle's were never included.
It's probably a lot of people in this neighborhood that's carrying the same thing that we're carrying, but they keep it to themselves.
The ATSDR here in Atlanta determined there was no elevated cancer risk for people living near the Defense Depot based on data from the early 90s. In your opinion, do you think a more complete study needs to be done in this neighborhood?
Yes, absolutely, no question. And in addition to the so-called more scientific investigation, we have a responsibility regardless to address those health concerns. And then that's where we should start. There are people who are sick.
Dr. Reuben Warren served as the Associate Director for the ATSDR. His name appears in the Defense Depot records from the 90s. He says the data used in previous studies may not tell the full story.
The truth has to be repeated over and over again, and you get the truth from the folks who are suffering. The best way to find out is ask people. People don't make up things, they don't oppose, well, we're sick. They know we're sick, and the science that says the relationship, the cause-effect, is secondary.
Dr. Warren says neighborhoods impacted by contamination are hardest hit by chronic disease. Those areas, called environmental justice communities, are often lower income and communities of color. Dr. Warren, who is also a bioethics professor, says people in those neighborhoods deserve action, even when the science isn't conclusive.
If there's doubt, we should address community concerns versus saying, well, we can't find a quote-unquote complete exposure pathway, and therefore there's no concern. Let's solve the problem and then back into it rather than deny the plausibility of it for fear of any liability.
For Debbie, the questions linger every time she walks to her mailbox short of breath, wondering what's in the air around her.
You think it's all connected?
I think just anything that's going on with your lungs and stuff, with the Defense Depot being as close as it was, I think it might have something to do with it. I really do believe it.
The Memphis Defense Depot site remains under EPA supervision as a Superfund site. Residents here say they'll keep pushing for a new, more comprehensive health study, one that looks beyond just the cancer statistics. Covering your health in South Memphis, Mandy Rock, Fox 13 News.
Fox 13 Investigates is committed to not only showing you the problem, but also investigating solutions. When we come back, we're going to show you the next step that neighbors want to see happen and how they're taking matters into their own hands.
In your opinion, do you think a more complete study needs to be done in this neighborhood?
Yes, absolutely, no question.
That expert scientist agrees with neighbors. A more comprehensive study needs to be done in the neighborhood near the old Memphis Defense Depot. Going door to door would take a lot of time, a lot of money, but could provide a clearer picture of what's making neighbors sick. For now, some neighbors are taking action on their own to find solutions.
80,000 people were in just this neighborhood, and the way they have robbed and raped us over some money.
For Frank Johnson and Marquita Bradshaw, money is the key for their community.
Some people only look at reparations as monetary, but also for our health. We want to see just full reparations that take into account how the pollution has affected how we live, how we learn, how we worship, how we work, and how we recreate.
In a previous Fox 13 investigation, we showed you the depot land was sold off for private business use for about $35 million. Most of that money was used for economic development projects across Shelby County, but not in the neighborhoods around the depot.
So we're talking with a couple of attorneys from outside of the state, and they said that it's a real good possibility of us having a good case.
But after all this time, Johnson says hope is getting harder to come by.
I plan on departing this city this December because...
You're going to move out of Memphis?
Yes. Because I don't see this getting any better.
The EPA continues to monitor the old Defense Depot site for the spread of toxic chemicals, including frequent groundwater monitoring. The Army Corps of Engineers also set strict land use rules. No building houses, daycares, or schools on the entire property. No drilling for drinking water. And no digging deeper than 10 feet into the ground in certain areas because of chemical contamination. The EPA cleanup process also identified 3 plumes, places where the groundwater under the depot is contaminated. Scientists with the University of Memphis have also identified a breach in the aquifer's protective layer, right underneath the depot site. The breach means chemicals could eventually filter into the source of Memphis's drinking water.
Historically, our aquifer really is pure, truly pure. It's the activities of the past 60, 70 years catching up with us. So now it's looking at how this legacy pollution, these sins of the past, are really actually becoming our problem today.
Protect Our Aquifer recently announced a $250,000 grant to help neighbors monitor that contaminated groundwater and create a plan to protect everyone's drinking water. Another solution, Marquita Bradshaw and her organization, Sowing Justice, recently received 1,000 indoor air monitors.
We are hoping that people use this to actually know what's going on inside their home and put steps in place that we can fight and advocate for people to have clean air.
Homes across South Memphis can now track their air quality.
You need clean air and water and soil. I don't care where you live, and you have a right to it.
The toxic legacy of the Memphis Defense Depot continues to challenge our community. On one hand, this decommissioned Army base has been put to new use. Private businesses employ hundreds of workers here. On the other hand, the wounds of distrust caused by the actions of the past will take a long time to heal. Getting definitive answers from a new comprehensive study would go a long way in that process. You can count on Fox 13 to continue to tell the stories, search for solutions, and investigate our contaminated community. At the Defense Depot in South Memphis, I'm Ernie Freeman, Fox 13 News.